The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 124.
Oh man, Ufer's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long count from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked to send over there. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter hands up. Carter is down. Oh my God! Carter scores! Look at those Wolverines! 95 Wolverines going to the end zone. Carter got the pass. In the air, it's done. Buford is going to have his fun. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to this week's show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. The Wolverines did what they needed to and were expected to do on Saturday against UMass in a 63-13 romp. Now the heavy lifting begins as we make the bus trip for an overnight in Niles, Michigan on Friday and a primetime coast-to-coast TV game with the Fighting Irish on Saturday night in South Bend. On today's Michigan Rewind, we'll take one final look back at the UMass game through the eyes of Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com. Then we set our sights on Notre Dame. On our visitor segment, Lou Somogyi, a longtime editor of Blue and Gold, the Notre Dame magazine, will join us with his inside look at this week's opponent. Kyle Meinke will be back on Michigan Gameday with his thoughts on what it will take for Michigan to come away victorious in South Bend. Before we get to all of that, let's start as we always do with our view from Section 17, some of my random thoughts on where we are as a team right now. We're 3 games into the season, and I'm not sure what to think. As Kyle Meinke says, we've played 3 teams with varying skill levels and very different styles. One thing I'm sure of, we have a long way to go, and I think we'll be a better team as the season progresses. On offense, Devin Gardner continues to improve, and Devin Funchess, I think, looks like the real deal at tight end. We still need more contributions from Gallen, Roundtree, and Jeremy Jackson. The offensive line play is a concern. Coach Hoke says he isn't worried yet. It takes time for continuity to develop, so we have to hope we see positive progression this week. Fitz seemed like he was tentative hitting the holes last week and almost looks like he's running in slow motion at times. Let's hope he rounds into shape in the next few weeks and finds a rhythm. We need him to be that other threat in the backfield to take the focus off Denard. Hopefully Thomas Rawls will add to the mix in the running game. I thought Denard was excellent against UMass. His reads were good, most of his throws were on target, and he didn't once throw off that back foot. As usual, he ran the ball very effectively. I do like what I see in Denard's progression from last year. On D, we didn't get any push Saturday against a weak offensive line. This is a huge area of concern as we head to South Bend on Saturday, and then look ahead to the Big Ten portion of the schedule. The linebacker play was fair on Saturday. I thought Joe Bolden turned in another solid performance against UMass. Overall, I think that this unit has a great upside. The secondary still seems to be struggling at times. J.T. Floyd has been steady at corner, if not spectacular, but replacing Blake Countess has been very tricky, as we expected it would be. The real tests for the secondary lie ahead in the coming weeks. Coach Madison's defense is under construction and should get better as the season rolls on. Special teams play I thought was okay on Saturday. Matt Weil is doing a good job, but our coverage is not what it needs to be right now. Dennis Norfleet has jump-started the kick return team, and he looks like he could go the distance on any return. This week would be nice. Brendan Gibbons has also been solid on extra points and field goals. All in all, our special teams play has been acceptable, but not spectacular. I came away from Saturday still not having a handle on what kind of a team we have. I think much like the team, the fans are struggling to figure things out too. We will certainly learn more this Saturday evening down in South Bend, for better or worse. So enough of my rambling thoughts. Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com will join us next on today's Michigan Rewind with his UMass wrap-up, right here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Rewind segment this week is Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com. Kyle, great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Mike.
Well, even though this was a romp for Michigan Saturday, Kyle, 63-13 over UMass, it really did not erase many of the concerns we have about this team, did it?
No, not at all. It's funny to bring that up. That's exactly what I was just writing today. Basically, Michigan's played 3 games to this point, but they played 3 teams of such varying degrees of competency and playing style. It really can be hard to call from those 3 victories what this Michigan team actually is and what it could be going forward. I mean, they've played. They got routed by Alabama, but that's a team that's number 1 in the country, and they haven't been scored upon in 2 weeks since, and just killed Arkansas over the weekend. And then they play Air Force, and they win that game, but didn't look particularly impressive doing it. A lot of concerns defensively, especially in the running game. And then of course Michigan blasted UMass over this weekend. But they might be the worst team in Division One. They've really struggled in their first year as an FCS team. And those 3 teams, they play such varying styles too. I mean, Alabama's more of a pro-style power team. Air Force is a triple option team, something Michigan hasn't seen in a long time and won't see going forward. And of course UMass is a spread team. And so it can be really difficult to pull. That's a difficult stretch for Michigan because of those 3 teams are so different. But the good news is they play Notre Dame next week. It's a more difficult challenge, but they do present a more regular offense for them to face, a spread offense like they faced last week. And I think they'll now start to settle into the groove going forward.
Well, you're right, Kyle. Through the first 3 games, yes, these are very different teams that we played in the first 3 games, but can you ever remember in the time that you've watched and covered University of Michigan football going into week 4 of a season and, sort of looking at this team and thinking, what kind of a team are we? Where are we headed? It's very, very tough to get a feel for this team, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's hard for me to compare. I just on my second season covering Michigan, and so I don't have a lot of firsthand experience. But from being around from the state of Michigan, I'm familiar, and you're right. I don't remember being so unfamiliar, knowing so little about a team after 3 games. At least after 3 games, you typically have a feel for what a team could be. And I don't have a feel right now for what this team. For all I know, this team could win a Big Ten championship, and for all I know, this team could finish 3rd in its own division. And that's just how little we know at this point. Of course, the litmus test that I think will be this coming Saturday against Notre Dame. That's a big-time matchup. They're obviously coming off that big win in East Lansing against Michigan State, which is number 10 in the country at the time. And of course, there's that rivalry there between the 2 teams too. And so I think we'll get a better feel after this coming weekend as that team goes into South Bend and tries to win on the road, and we'll get a better feel for what this team is and what that could mean going into the Big Ten season.
No, absolutely. I think we agree with that. Let's take a look back at Saturday's game, though, for just a couple of minutes, Kyle. The offense produced 585 yards on Saturday, which is really hard to find fault with. Most of the production, again, came from Denard. But overall, what did you think of the offensive performance?
It's hard to gauge because UMass is just it's on a different level right now when it comes to talent and depth and all those things. But from what I thought, the thing that I liked that I can pull from it is that Michigan, and specifically Denard Robinson, is finding other targets to go to. And I think diversifying the offensive attack and getting the ball a little bit out of Denard's hands, or giving him more targets to throw to, is really key to building some consistency. Because from what we've seen in Denard's career, obviously he has those games where he just goes bonkers, but then he has games where he struggles, a defense is able to shut him down, and Michigan struggles to win those games most often. I mean, they beat Virginia Tech in a game like that, where they shut down Denard, but then Michigan was able to pull it out even without the offense going. But that's more the exception. I mean, Michigan, they lost to Michigan State in a game like that. They lost to Iowa in a game like that. They got killed against Alabama in a game like that. So I think to build the offensive consistency, to build a Michigan team that can win without Denard Robinson having 1,000 yards of total offense is important. And I think that rests really on him finding more weapons around him. And against UMass, but you did see some flashes from pitch to shot, working in space a little bit, making some nice cuts. I would have wanted to see more from him, but he got 85, 90 yards, and that's a great start. And you look at what Devin Gardner's doing in his first year as a receiver. I mean, he's only 3 games in. He's already got 3 touchdown passes. He leads Michigan and catches and yards and catching touchdowns. And that's a weapon that wasn't really expected of the passing game. We certainly thought he had the physical tools, but we didn't know what he would be or if he'd be full-time out there. So that's kind of a weapon that's kind of risen out of nowhere a little bit. And Devin Funchess, the freshman tight end, I mean, he's technically 4th on the depth chart. Yet he has the 3rd or 4th most receiving yards from Michigan. It's become a very real valuable target for Denard Robinson. I like his combination of size and speed at the tight end position. I think he'll pose a lot of matchup problems for teams going forward. Those guys' emergence shows a more diversified offensive attack than what we thought coming into the season. And that, for me, was the biggest takeaway from a game that was, a 50-point blowout, and you can't really take much else from.
Were you surprised that Denard and the starters were in the game as long as they were Saturday?
I was. I really was. And we asked Brady Hook about that after the game, and he basically said that he's so unhappy to this point with the way his team's performed. And, of course, they have that big matchup next week in South Bend against Notre Dame, that he had more he wanted to work on with the starters, and specifically with Denard Robinson. But Denard stayed in for that last drive of the third quarter, and I was surprised by that. The game, I think, was 49-13 or somewhere in that area for that last series, and he was still in there. And I'm just thinking, if he does anything, if he twists an ankle or whatever, if he trips and falls over his shoelaces going out to the huddle, anything, Brady Hook's going to come under a lot of fire. And of course, it worked out. Nothing happened. And they got a couple of more looks from Denard, and I think that's what they wanted. I think that speaks to this team being unhappy right now with where it's at, and I think that's why you saw them in there as late as you did, because it was a surprise.
Well, the defense, Kyle, allowed 121 yards to a team that had 81 yards total in their first 2 games. So, as we expected, we saw a lot of young faces out in the field on Saturday. I know it's tough to tell against a team like UMass, but did you see anything in the way of improvement this week from the defense?
I didn't see improvement. I didn't see a whole lot I can take from it either, if that makes sense. I mean, the game is just so different than anything else that Michigan will face, and that's kind of what we've established already, is that this team is really hard to finger at this point. But I had concerns going into that game about the defensive line, and those concerns are still there. I'm really concerned about the defensive line. I don't see Will Campbell and Quentin Washington having the kind of impact that Michigan needs from its tackles inside there on the defensive line. They've been kind of no-shows. I think they combined for 3 tackles on Saturday against UMass. And for large stretches of that game, you actually saw Craig Rowe playing inside and Jabril Black playing inside, 2 guys who began the season as ends. They were playing inside with Frank Clark on the weak side end, and then a linebacker, typically Jake Ryan, on the other end. So you can see Michigan is doing all it can to find a combination that'll work. And for large lengths of that game against UMass, it did not involve Will Campbell and Quentin Washington. I think that's a pretty bad sign that Michigan's just not getting the kind of production I hope to get from those guys, even against a team like UMass. And those guys struggled even against Air Force, against a team that had 260-pound offensive linemen. And so how that transfers over to a team like Notre Dame with a pretty prolific offense and a much bigger offensive line, we'll have to wait and see. But that is my biggest concern about this team going into week 4.
And I think we can say after Saturday that most of us came away not knowing what we have on offense, really what we have on defense. Got to see a lot of young guys get on the field. So as far as a takeaway from Saturday's game, it was just good to get a win, to win comfortably, and get a lot of the young guys some action.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about all the bad things about this game, but the bottom line is that this was a 50-point win against an inferior team, and there was a time not too long ago that Michigan couldn't do that, even when they were expected to. So I think that does show growth, that they were able to come out and maybe not play exactly like they wanted to, but they did get a 50-point win, and they beat the crap, a team they should have beat the crap, and then by doing that, by jumping to that early lead, as you mentioned, they got the young guys in there, and that's good for two reasons. Obviously, it gets the starters out and out of the way of injury risks and all that, because this team is struggling right now with injuries. They have 5 starters in play against UMass, 5 reserves in play against UMass. So they've already done 10 players, including 5 starters. So getting those guys out and healthy, Michigan didn't sustain any additional injuries, and so that was a big key. And then secondly, obviously, you get those young guys experience, and maybe that won't pay dividends next week per se, but it pays dividends going forward. It helps the team build depth. You get a guy like Jared Wilson out there in the secondary playing lots of reps. You get the young linebackers out there like a Joe Bolden and James Ross. Well, those guys are playing significant reps as it is. We're getting them 4 quarters basically of action. It helps to build that portfolio of experience for those guys going into more challenging games, such as Notre Dame.
That's Kyle Meinke, Michigan beat writer from AnnArbor.com. He will be back on our Michigan Game Day segment with his thoughts on this weekend's big game with the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Coming up next is our visitor segment, and we will be joined by the longtime editor of the Notre Dame magazine Blue and Gold, Lou Somogyi. That's next here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Visitor segment this week is Lou Somogyi from Blue and Gold, the magazine that covers Notre Dame athletics. We had Lou on last year, and Lou, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, Lou, Notre Dame off to a great start. I believe first 3-0 start in a decade. Are you surprised at how well this team's gotten out of the gate?
I can't say necessarily surprised. We went into this season looking at, one of the most foremost objectives was to maybe start off 4-0, finish unbeaten in the month of September, get to that bye week, September 29th, with that unbeaten record. And you looked at it row by row, and you said, let's see, you beat Navy by 42 last year, so that's doable. You beat Purdue by 28 on the road last year. That's doable. You even beat Michigan State by 18, so it's not like they were this ultimate boogeyman. Now, going on the road is a whole different dimension and all. But to come away 3-0, yeah, it's a great feeling. And now you look at Michigan, which has beaten Notre Dame 3 straight in the 11th hour. 11 seconds left, 27 seconds left, 2 seconds left. Now you got them at home at night. And if you make this clean sweep here, beat all 3 Big Ten teams for the first time since 2002, you're going to be sitting pretty there.
Well, let's talk about that big win on Saturday night for just a minute. 20-3 over the Spartans, national TV game up in East Lansing. Very impressive. Coach Kelly said after the game it was a signature win for the program under his direction. Would you agree with that?
It's the biggest win, I think, under his direction. Signature, I guess you can call it that. There's different ways of defining what a signature victory ends up being. If Michigan State ends up 6-6 or something, maybe it won't be looked at as much. But as far as getting off the schneid and going beyond the status quo, and for the first time in 7 years, recording a victory against the top 10 team on the road, yeah, it was a good moment for Notre Dame. It gets another of those monkeys off its back that has been, plaguing it for so many years. So it's another good step for the program.
Well, speaking of getting monkeys off the back, the last 3 losses to the Wolverines have been, more than gut-wrenching for the Irish team and the fans. And I think it's safe to say that that will add to the atmosphere surrounding Saturday night's matchup, won't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone talked about, gosh, if you go into that game 3-0, it's truly going to be an electric atmosphere because then, you're riding a crest of the momentum or the wave of the momentum from the last 3 weeks and all, and there's just an excitement and electricity that comes with it, and especially knowing that the following week is a bye week. You don't ever want to go into the bye week with a loss lingering in your head and everything. And if you can be 4-0 for the first time entering October in 10 years, and only the 5th time overall in history at the program, not that there have been a lot of September games over the years, that just evokes nothing but good feelings.
Lou, do you think the way the last 3 losses have gone down for the Irish, just absolutely wild, going down, as you said, to the 11th hour, do you think there's a feeling heading into this week's game from not only the team but the Irish fans that, hey, we're due this time?
Well, it's not like waiting for a train. You can't ever, in athletics, talk about being due. But I understand where you're coming from. Maybe from the law of averages, that at some point you've got to, turn this around. Stanford and USC last week. Well, Stanford had won 3 straight. USC probably thought it was due to finally beat Stanford because that hadn't been done, but you can't operate by those principles. It's got to get done on the field. But as far as putting themselves in a position for good things to happen, I think Notre Dame's been doing that, and then making things do becomes a little bit easier that way.
Well, looking ahead to the game this Saturday night, then, Lou, Denard Robinson, as everyone knows down there, has given the Irish fits the last couple of years. But looking at that game Saturday night, it appears to me that Notre Dame front seven, very, very solid. Do you think the game plan heading into Saturday night is going to be to, load up that box and make Denard beat you with his arm instead of his feet?
Yeah, I think that's how it has to be. We're just like in any other game plan. I mean, you ask any coach in the country and say, if you had to give 400 yards up in a game, would you rather have it be 300 rushing and 100 passing, or 300 passing and 100 rushing? And 100 out of 100 will say they'd rather you do it through the air, because that means you're now in a catch-up mode, or maybe in more of a desperation mode. If you're getting 300 yards on the ground, you're completely controlling the game. You're controlling the line of scrimmage, everything else. So, a couple of years ago, Pierre Denard ran for 258 yards. Now, last year he was limited to 108, and some of the passes that occurred there's some incredible breakdowns. The game turned. Notre Dame's up 24-7, and Capron Lewis Moore has Denard ready for a sack here, has him in his grasp, kind of spins around and just releases a ball that ends up going 77 yards. And, that's where the game really turned. And then on the final possession, there's a breakdown in coverage, and they go for 60 yards. So it's really limiting them. It's limiting the yards per attempt, the yards after the catch. If you can, he might be able to throw for 250, 300 yards, but if it takes 40, 50 attempts to do it, and they only average about 5 or 6 yards attempt, like Michigan State did, I think 4.2, then you're in great shape.
Lou, tell us a little bit about personnel to watch. We know about Manti Te'o, but some of the other guys on that defensive side for the Irish that we're going to see on Saturday night.
This is probably the best 7 at Notre Dame in the last 20 years, since those great 93 teams. Other teams had very good front lines, but maybe not as strong as linebackers. Others were strong at linebacker, maybe not as good along the defensive line, and maybe the depth overall wasn't as strong. This unit is strong every which way. I think Stephon Tuitt, the sophomore, he was overshadowed a lot by freshman All-American Aaron Lynch last season. I really think he has the opportunity to be Notre Dame's most dominant, best interior lineman since Bryant Young in 93. And Anthony Weaver also was very good from 98 through 2001. But this young man is really special and driven. He's got 5 sacks through the first 3 games. Lewis Nix in the middle, junior nose guard. He's that classic nose guard figure, just plugging up that middle, taking up bodies, taking up space, but also agile and fast enough to make plays on his own. Cameron Lewis, more fifth-year senior defensive end coming off knee surgery last year. Really primed for a breakthrough year here. Prince Shimbo and Ishak Williams at the outside linebacker spots on one end of the field, splitting time there. Shimbo had a career game last weekend against Michigan State. 8 tackles alone in the first half. For loss, sack, 2 passes broken up, etc. Or actually, that was Nick with the 2 passes. But, and Danny Spond is healthy again on the other side. So there's a lot of good things going on.
There are some concerns, though, back in the secondary, aren't there?
Well, there definitely were going into the season. That was the number 1 projected area of concern there. And it still probably will be, because they haven't really faced not so much top quarterback or a veteran quarterback, but the receiving cores of most of the teams have, they're kind of average. But at the same time, I think the secondary has performed far beyond the capabilities that people may have envisioned prior to the season. Kyle Russell, first true freshman ever to start at cornerback in an opener for Notre Dame, has just been an amazing surprise. Bennett Jackson Jr. is a converted wide receiver. He's done quite well there at the position. You have a few other young players. Elijah Shoemate, another true freshman at the nickel position. He broke up 2 key third down passes against Michigan State, both on the opening possessions of each half. They're on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, positioned himself perfectly to make the play. So they're still young back there. That's going to be an area of concern, but I think any coach will tell you, if they had a choice between having veteran proven ability in the front 7 or in the back end of the defense, I think if you can have it in that front 7, it will enhance the performance and abilities of the back players.
You're absolutely right about that.
They did suffer a big loss, though, this weekend. Jamar Slaughter, 5th-year senior safety, outstanding leader and playmaker, is lost for the season with an Achilles tendon. So that's a position that's been ravaged by some attrition in recent over the last year. Austin Collinsworth also looks like he's out for the year with a shoulder surgery. And so you still have Zeke Mata, senior, leading the core back there, and Matthias Farley, a sophomore, has been quite a pleasant surprise, along with Kavari Russell, maybe the top 2 on this year's team so far. But yeah, that would be an area that would be of concern.
Let's talk about that Notre Dame offense for a couple of minutes, Lou. The Michigan defensive front has struggled mightily through the first 3 games. With a young quarterback like Everett Golson, do you expect Notre Dame will keep the pressure off him, just really try to pound the ball at this defensive front from what they've seen so far?
Well, that's what they did against Navy in the opener, but let me tell you, the training wheels were taken off Everett Golson at Michigan State. Brian Kelly and the offense came out firing right from the start. 21-yard pass to T.J. Jones on the second play. They went for broke for a potential 60-yard touchdown to freshman Chris Brown down the field, and he had him beat by a step there, just a pass overthrown, and then he just kept slinging away, and the first touchdown came 5 minutes into the game, where he avoided a rush, ran to the right side, and then threw across the field to his left. A very, very difficult pass to make and requiring an extremely strong arm, but it went for a 36-yard touchdown, and they weren't shy at all about going downfield a lot more. That's not to say that's going to be the MO all the way through, but you could definitely. I anticipate going to the Michigan State game. It's like, okay, probably going to be conservative as heck here, just avoid the big mistakes and turnovers, but they took the training wheels off there, no question about it. And they started doing that even against Purdue, so each week they've been adding a little bit more.
Well, from what I've been reading, Coach Kelly's very impressed, has just a lot of good things to say about Golson and where he is right now. Can you tell us a little bit of what style of a quarterback he is? Because I don't think Michigan fans have seen that much of him yet.
He's a passer first. So often there's always the stereotype of any black quarterback being, listed first as an athlete. But the thing that stood out, in his junior year of high school, in the 14 games he played, because he was injured some of the senior, but in the 14 games he played, 7 of them he finished with 0 or negative yards rushing. So right there, that tells you that, this isn't the Tony Rice or necessarily an option. Now, he's elusive, he extends the play, he's just like against Michigan State, he was able to avoid that rush, roll out to the right, and then throw across the field for the 36-yard. I think one of the best examples, though, was against Purdue. They were backed up around like their 13-yard line. And similar situation. 2 players broke through for Purdue, and he made a quick jab step to his left, avoided both of them, to his right, and he had clear sailing for about 15, 20 yards down the field. He could have picked up 15, 20 yards on the run, but his eyes were focused down the field, and he saw an open tight end, Troy Nicholas, breaking free and hit him for a 30-yard gain. And that right there told you that this guy's a passer first and foremost. He finished with, I believe, the 6th most passing yards in high school history. So he's capable of doing damage with his feet. His elusiveness gives Notre Dame a different dimension and helps open up other avenues of the offense, unlike last season. But he still, first and foremost, is a passer.
Man, he has an incredible upside because he just doesn't have that many games under his belt, so he should get better and better as the season goes along.
Yes.
Talk about the running backs, Lou, if we could, for a couple of minutes in that receiving core, and give us your thoughts on, what you've seen from them so far in the first 3 games.
Well, to have 3 backs the caliber of Sierra Wood, Theo Riddick, and George Atkinson. Atkinson is the speedster. He's the game breaker. He had a 56-yard run against Navy for a touchdown. He took a sprint draw, a misdirection type play for 32 yards against Michigan State that set up their 2nd touchdown and kind of really put Notre Dame in a comfortable position against them. So he provides that dimension. He's ranks, I would guess, among the top, I'd say in college football, 10 fastest players. He ran a 10.36 600 meters in the Big East track meets this year, just for pure game-breaking speed. He's got that. Returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns last year as a freshman. Theo Riddick is that slashing. He's the type who has the moves that could make a defender miss in a phone booth. I guess maybe our younger listeners don't know what a phone booth is anymore. But he's just got that slashing, and he runs hard. He has that physical, but he also provides. Last 2 years, he was the slot receiver in the offense, but his natural position is running back. But he provides that threat out of the backfield as a receiving threat. And Sierra Wood is a little bit of everything. Very effective this past weekend at Michigan State. First time he was back after a 2-game suspension. 10 carries, 56 yards. Just really did well on that outside zone blocking sweep, waited patiently for his blockers to make their move, and just found the holes very well. So it's not like there's, one guy's a speed back, the other's a power, and there is some of that. Each has his own specialty. There's not that one single battering ram like on 3rd and 2. He's going to go right between the tackles and move the pile. I don't know if there's anybody like that on that roster. They all run hard and everything, but plenty of options to go with. And the receiving core, Tyler Eifert is the Michael Floyd of this receiving core. Even though his title is tight end, he can be moved around. He didn't catch any passes at Michigan State, but I often make this comparison to the 1988 national champions. They lost Tim Brown from the 1987 team. He won the Heisman Trophy. And, the rule was if Tim Brown is double covered, throw it to him. And if he's triple or quadruple covered, still throw it to him. And I think that took away some from the offense. The next year when they won the national title without Brown, there was just so much of a better cohesion and balance there in the receiving core. And it's not implying that you're better off without a superstar like a Michael Floyd or a Tim Brown, but sometimes it forces an offense, and especially when you have the versatility at quarterback that you do with an Everett Golson, to be able to explore a better balance and achieve a little bit more collectively rather than turn to one individual. It's great to have a Tyler Eifert this year or a Michael Floyd as that one reliable guy you can turn to in the clutch, and they'll come through. But I think it just provides so much more to the overall team chemistry and team play on offense with a number of different options to turn to.
Well, a ton of talent for Coach Kelly to work with, no doubt about it, on the offensive side this year. A question I have for you, Lou, is now Coach Kelly in his third year, correct?
Yes.
Is there a lot of pressure on him, or is the expectation among the Notre Dame faithful this year that this is the year they want to really see the program jump forward? Is that safe to say?
I think that was a very good way to put it in that third year. And, it wasn't a make or break year. Now, Notre Dame has an extremely special history here. Knute Rockne, Frank Leahy, Ara Parseghian, Dan Devine, Lou Holtz, all either finished unbeaten or won a national title, if not both, in their third years at Notre Dame. So, therefore, it's like, okay, here's the pressure. You got to do it too. No, it's not about that. What it's more about is other coaches like Charlie Weiss, Ty Willingham, Bob Davie, Jerry Faust, and many other predecessors before that lost a minimum of 5 games. That's when the alarm bells start setting off. And when you look at the schedule this year, your first thing is, boy, you can't afford another 5-loss season, because then the natives are going to start getting restless. There's the feeling that, is this program really making progress? Like I said, he didn't have to win the national title or anything like that this year, but you absolutely wanted to see like some tangible progress, something that makes you say, okay, that's what I'm talking about. I was pleasantly surprised, whether it's getting into the BCS, maybe even winning it, or something like that, or just, even against Michigan State, beating a top 10 team on the road. Those are the things where you want to start seeing the evidence rather than just trying to manufacture in your head like, well, they came a little closer this year, but, it's 7-5 or 8-4, and, I still see maybe there's hope. You want to start really seeing something on the field, and so far, so good.
No, you're right about that. Any significant injuries for the Irish heading into Saturday that you know of, Lou?
Well, we talked about Jamar Slaughter. He's out for the year at safety with the Achilles tendon, but otherwise, I think they're in decent shape there.
Well, Lou, as we all know, since the series resumed in the late 70s, for those of us who've been around since the resumption of the series, we have seen, some classics, some great games in through the years. It seems to bring out the best in both teams. Do you think we're in for another humdinger this Saturday night?
Well, I like to say what Lou also is used to sometimes say, especially before the 87 Michigan game. It doesn't have to be close. In fact, after 3 straight coming down to the final minutes, maybe, we've talked about law of averages, or one team or the other is primed to perhaps win going away. But usually the smart money is on it being close.
Well, it will be a fascinating game to see. I know there are a lot of questions on the Michigan side, a lot that need to be answered Saturday night and moving forward, and I'm sure Notre Dame although very pleased with the start they're having, still have a lot of their own questions. So it should be a fun Saturday evening. Our guest on the show today has been Lou Somogyi from Blue and Gold, a magazine that covers the Fighting Irish. You guys do a great job, and enjoy Saturday night.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks to Lou Somogyi for being our guest on the Visitor segment today. Lou is the longtime editor from the Notre Dame magazine Blue and Gold Illustrated. Coming up next, Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com, Michigan beat writer, returns on our Michigan Gameday segment with his thoughts on what it will take for Michigan to come away with a win Saturday night down in South Bend. That's next here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Game Day segment today, Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com. And Kyle, this Saturday the Wolverines head to South Bend for a nationally televised night game. The Irish, as we've talked about, coming off a very impressive win of their own Saturday night in East Lansing, 20-3 over the Spartans. The last two games in this series have been really gut-wrenching losses for the Irish. So I think it's safe to say they are going to be ready to play on Saturday night, aren't they?
Yeah, and even going back to the Tate Forsyth game 3 years ago, you can go back to that one and say 3 years in a row. It's been kind of a gut-wrenching series for Notre Dame. I mean, fans from Michigan look at it from their side that this has been a great stretch. Even during a couple of bad years for Michigan, they're still able to beat Notre Dame. They could kind of hang their head on that. It's the exact inverse for Notre Dame, and there's certainly a bad taste in their mouths. They've had this game circled for a while. And, Brian Kelly got that team off to their best start in 10 years. I just read that today. So they're feeling pretty good about their chances. And obviously they went, but it's hard to win anywhere on the road nowadays. I mean, Big Ten teams were near 500 last year on the road. So, it's a very difficult nowadays to win on the road for a lot of reasons. And Notre Dame went into East Lansing and spanked Michigan State, for lack of a better word, and especially defensively. I mean, they really showed some fortitude on that side of the ball. I think that this will be a good test for Michigan because Notre Dame will show up. And I pointed out before, I feel like Brady Hoke, he's 10-0 now at home, but his teams have yet to show a lot of consistency on the road. So that's one big question mark I still have about this team, and again, that'll start to be answered a little bit against Notre Dame this week.
Well, Kyle, as we mentioned earlier, Michigan's first three games have raised many concerns and a few questions that have been answered. This game will be a very good barometer of what kind of team Michigan is, and fair or not, for the rest of the season. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it would. I mean, we've established how basically their first three games you faced all different kinds of teams in terms of competency and then in terms of playing styles, and now you're going to basically center that measure a little bit. You're going to have a team that you're used to playing. It's a rivalry you play pretty much every year. You're familiar with each other's styles, and obviously both programs are top 16, top 17 teams right now. And so I think that we will get a better feel. Notre Dame's more like Michigan's future opponent and its past opponent to them. They won't face another Alabama. They certainly won't face another Air Force, and they won't face another team that's as bad as UMass. But Notre Dame is a lot more akin to a team like Michigan State or an Ohio State, especially in Ohio State, a team that runs the spread and has pretty good defense. And so I do agree. I think after this game we'll be able to say a little bit more about how this team could fare in the Big Ten schedule.
Looking at the game Saturday night, then, Kyle, Notre Dame, from seeing them Saturday night, their front seven, very physical on the defensive side, but they look a little bit suspect in the secondary, and Spartans sure helped them out with 7 drops on Saturday night. So how do you think Michigan's going to attack this defense?
I haven't got a chance to really break down the film of that game yet myself, but from knowing Notre Dame as I do, and then, of course, the physical front seven, that's kind of what they're known for, the defensive front seven that you mentioned. You got the All-American linebacker, Monte Teal, and all these guys. It's very strong. I think that what you'll see is Michigan trying to stretch the game vertically. Because if you look at the games in which Denard Robinson struggled the most and henceforth Michigan's offense, it's been games where teams kind of load up the box to stop Denard's running ability. And they basically force him to pass, and they force Michigan to beat them with the pass. And Notre Dame has the personnel to do that, have that kind of game plan with their front seven. And so I expect them to come after Denard and try to force him to pass and prove that he is that better passer. We've seen glimpses of that, but he hasn't really proved it. And I think that's what you'll see Notre Dame do is you'll see them load box. So I think for Michigan to beat Notre Dame, I think Denard's going to have to be efficient. He's going to have to hit a couple of deep passes and stretch that defense out vertically, and then you can go to the run with Denard or with Toussaint. And I think that's the way to beat a Notre Dame team that was very good last week against Michigan State. Michigan's better offensively than Michigan State, but to hold that team to 3 points at home is really it's something to look out for.
No, absolutely. But, in watching the game last night, the State did have 7 drops, and there was room for the receivers in the secondary. And I was thinking, for Coach Borges, an Alabama-type game plan might work this week because they are so physical, they being Notre Dame up front and their front 7. Very tough. They're going to load up the box against Denard. It looks like to open those running lanes, Denard is going to be challenged to find some open receivers, and that could be a big breakthrough for the offense if he can do that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that kind of goes back to you can't take a whole lot out of that UMass game, but something I did really enjoy watching was just watching Michigan diversify. I mean, Denard in the first half he hit 8 different receivers with passes, ended up with 9 for the game, even though he played for only 3 quarters. And I think that shows that he's getting comfortable in the passing game, that he can check down a little bit, something he's really struggled with significantly in the past. And so seeing that, I think, Notre Dame's on a totally different planet than what UMass is, but that does show glimpses of what Denard is now more capable of doing, which is working through the passing game, working through progression, and trying to find a soft spot in the defense. Things I've not seen from him in the past. He has that strong arm. I don't think his accuracy has been that bad in the past. I think it really does come down to the mental components of the game, that he has a hard time recognizing coverages and finding the soft spots in the defenses. And I think that what you've seen from him, going to different receivers, finding new guys, finding a Gardner, finding a puncher, it shows that he's becoming more capable of doing that.
Yeah, and he's going to have to do that Saturday night. Notre Dame's offense, to me, has struggled for consistency in the first 3 games, just like Michigan has. They've got just an incredible amount of talent, 4- and 5-star guys in the backfield, a talented young receiving core. But Saturday night's going to be a big challenge for the young quarterback, Everett Golston, on the big stage again, isn't it?
It is. I mean, rivalry games are always a little bit different, and I've said that before with people ask me about how I think Michigan will do against Michigan State this year. And one thing that I always mention is that I really do like I like Michigan for that game in part because of Denard Robinson is a 3rd-year starter in that rivalry going up against Andrew Maxwell, who's in his first year. I think you can see some of that correlate to this game as well. I mean, Denard's seen everything that Notre Dame can bring at him. And certainly Notre Dame's going to try to find something else to do because they've had problems in the past stopping him. But having experience against that team and those uniforms and playing in that stadium and having success in that stadium, I feel confidence and it kind of breeds a sense of comfort a little bit, I think, in the surroundings. And so I think for those reasons you'll see a little bit less of an intimidation factor with the Denard. And then on the flip side, you got a Golston, the QB for Notre Dame, and he's done tremendous so far. But I think this will be the biggest, most intimidating game maybe that he's played in. He just went in East Lansing. That's impressive. But coming home and playing in front of a home crowd on national television at night, you got the team that's owned your team 3 years in a row. That's going to be, I think, a tall order for a first-time starting quarterback.
Absolutely. A performance like he had in the Irish Hat on Saturday sort of ratchets up the expectations, and now you're at home playing a big rival on the national stage. It will be interesting to see. Notre Dame offense, though, the offensive line, Kyle, it seems like they're struggling for continuity for the first 3 games, too, which you might expect. And again, they're loaded up with talent. But to me, the outcome Saturday night could come down to a question of, who wins that war? Michigan's defensive line or the Irish offensive front? What do you think?
If you're a Michigan fan, you better hope not. There's talent up front. I don't want to be too hard. I should say like Frank Clark. He's been tremendous to me. I've really liked what I've seen from him. He's obviously suspended for the Alabama game, but against Air Force and against UMass, I mean, he did what he was supposed to. He took a defender who was standing in front of him, who was probably 20 or 30 pounds lighter than him, tossed him aside, and ransacked the quarterback. And we shouldn't really be talking about this because this is what should be happening with all those guys up front against an inferior line. But that's why I think Frank Clark stands out. He's done what he was supposed to, and he's been disruptive. I think that's the best word that can really characterize his game so far. He doesn't have massive stats, but he's been disruptive. He changes what the offense is trying to do. He puts a thought in the back of the quarterback's mind that, if I don't get rid of this ball, he's going to throw me down for a 20-yard loss, like what happened against UMass. and that he plants that fear factor in the back of the mind, and that's something you don't get right now from a Will Campbell or Quentin Washington or a Drew Black or even a Craig Rowe, fourth-year starter. I mean, he's been kind of quiet so far. So Frank Clark's impressed me. Now it's time for the other guys to kind of step up and find their games as well and work as more of a cohesive unit, because Michigan will lose a game eventually if it doesn't get more production and more pressure from its defensive front. It does have pretty good linebackers, and I think they have really great defensive backs. Even with the loss of Towns, I still think that those defensive backs from Michigan, the secondary is still pretty solid. But you're going to lose games eventually in the Big Ten when it comes down to playing maybe on the road, playing in close games, and you're talking about inches there and inches here and inches there that decide a game, and you can't have your defensive line not show up and continue to win games. And so I think that at some point that part of Michigan's game has to come around. And I think it will. We saw that last year. Michigan's defensive line wasn't great at the beginning of the season. It was fine, but it wasn't great. By the end of the season, it was tremendous. It was the strength of the teammates. And so I think you'll see some of that growth going forward.
Well, on offense this Saturday night, then, Kyle, what do you think Michigan has to do to win this game?
Jeremiah Robinson has to show that he's competent and capable and consistent in the passing game. I think that in a game like this against a team that's so good and playing on the road, turnovers are always a thing that's going to shape a game. They're not struggle with turnovers. He had 15 of them last year, was the sixth most in the country. And he's had at least one in every game so far this year, including 2 pick sixes, including one against UMass. So I think that in order to eliminate the turnovers, and Michigan as a whole eliminating the turnovers, and maybe even creating a couple, that would be huge in a game like this, a rivalry game on the road. But Brady Hoke, if there's anything he blessed after that game, he might have been more upset about the turnovers than anything else. I mean, he spoke a lot about the line play, even while the offensive defense, but he got on a tangent at one point, just really ripping into his team for not being opportunistic and not being able to create the turnovers that they were so good at last year. And that's something that can sway these close games, road games, or rivalry games. So hang on the ball, and I think getting the shots going like he was last week, and getting some guys involved in the passing game, and like what they haven't punched this season, and what Michigan can do now with the tight end.
Well, over on the defensive side, did you have any sense that Michigan is good enough right now? And we've talked about all of the problems. Do you think they're good enough to contain this Notre Dame offense and the young quarterback Everett Golson?
I'm conflicted. I've seen flashes of it. There's talent there. We know that. There's good top-end talent. But there's just a lack of consistency right now, especially with the defensive line. I think defensive consistency, to me, starts with the defensive line, because you can shape a play from the start if you apply pressure or clog up holes, and that's something that Michigan hasn't necessarily gotten consistently yet from its line. And then, Michigan, I think, really struggled to get off the field in third downs, and that's pretty concerning. I think UMass had 4 first downs against UConn, and by the end of by the beginning of the second quarter, they had 4 in a row against Michigan, and they were like 3 for 6, I think. They converted half their first 6 third downs, so that's kind of concerning to me, because that's when you get off the field. I mean, Michigan's actually pretty good on first and second down. When you get the third down, that's your chance to get off the field. You need to have someone to step up and make the play, and that hasn't always been there. And so I think that those are kind of the keys that Michigan will look for against Notre Dame in a rivalry game, just to get off the field. And they've struggled to do that.
Well, heading into Saturday, Kyle, what we do know, we all know Notre Dame is 3-0, and we know Michigan is 2-1. The followers for both teams are really unsure as to what they really have. Saturday, at least, if anything is answered, that's going to be one of the questions that will be answered. In what direction are both teams headed, actually?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It's kind of an interesting thing because, Notre Dame and Michigan are talking about 2 of the preeminent powers, the historical powers in college football. But they've both taken their lumps in the past couple of years. Obviously, Michigan had the 11-2 season last year, but before that, you had 3 years under Rich Rodriguez, which were a struggle for them. And of course, Notre Dame cycled through a couple of coaches and had a number of dismal years in a row now since that 2002 season where they went to a BCS bowl. And so I think both teams, they don't really take success for granted, and I think they're hungry for more success than what they've experienced. There's always that cloud down in the back of your mind of, are we for real? Because they went through a long stretches, both of them, where they weren't for real, and I think they've both been kind of shied away from that. I think that fans are wary about what they have, but I think the teams are even a little bit too. And they're on guard because of that, because of the struggles they've incurred and the taste of success they've had, and wanting more of that going forward.
Well, one thing that fans on both sides know, and if we have been around long enough since 1978, since this series was renewed, We know that there have been so many tight games, so many classics that come out of this series. Even though there are all these question marks on both sides for Notre Dame and Michigan heading into Saturday night's game, the anticipation will really be ratcheted up all week because we could see another humdinger on Saturday night.
Yeah, there's been 3 in a row, and Denard's been a key player in the past 2. And this kind of an interesting footnote. Saturday's his birthday. So
is that right? I didn't know that.
It is. It's his 22nd birthday. So he's had 2 tremendous games in a row, both statistically and then also with the dramatics. I mean, it was my second game covering the Michigan beat for the Michigan-Notre Dame game last year at the Big House. First night game ever in the Big House. And Michigan struggled for the first couple of quarters. And you're thinking, oh no, here we go again. And then Denard turned it on, and he was lights out, making big play after big play. And, of course, engineered a couple of fourth-quarter comebacks. Raised a 17-pointer, went behind again, and then engineered another one with like 30 seconds to go. And so he's had that flair for the dramatic. He's been a clutch player, and especially a clutch player in this Notre Dame series. And he'll be looking for a little bit more on his birthday this coming Saturday.
Well, that just adds to it, and as we all know, it doesn't take much to get the fans on both sides. As football fans around the country interested in this game, we've just seen so many great games, and hopefully Saturday night is going to be the same. Thanks again to Kyle Meinke, Michigan beat writer from AnnArbor.com. Always great to have Kyle on the show. Coming up next, we wrap it up for another week on Wolverine Quick Hits, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, let's start with the injury update. Desmond Morgan and Richard Ashe should return this week. Stephen Hopkins is probable, Brennan Byer is questionable, and Brandon Moore will be out for at least another week. Here are some quick facts about this week's game and opponent, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Michigan leads the series with 23 wins, 15 losses, and 1 tie. The Irish are coached by Brian Kelly, now in his 3rd year, with a record of 19 wins and 10 losses. Notre Dame runs a spread offense and an aggressive 3-4 defense. They were 8-5 last year and lost to Florida State 18-14 in the Champs Sports Bowl. They returned 16 starters from last year's team, 8 on offense, 6 on D, and 2 special teams players. The Irish are off to their first 3-0 start in a decade, and with a win Saturday night, would have only their 4th undefeated September in program history. Hard to believe, but it is true. The Irish are coming off an impressive 20-3 victory over Michigan State in East Lansing last Saturday night. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Benefits include email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our hockey guru Yostmeister. The Monday Night Live chat takes place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so check it out. Join GBMW today and get your daily fix of maize and blue news and conversation. Then each Wednesday you can check out the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you're an Apple person, you'll find our app in the Lipson toolbox at the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give the show a review. It does help a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your comments. If you'd like to have your maize and blue opinion heard, give us a call at 313-263-4842. then leave an audio with your thoughts on this football season, the Notre Dame game, the upcoming basketball season, hockey, recruiting, anything that's on your mind. Just give us your name, where you're calling from, and then ramble on. If you'd rather send us an email, our address is themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. I welcome your thoughts on anything maize and blue. Thanks again to our guest today, Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com, and Lou Somogyi, editor and lead writer for the Notre Dame magazine Blue and Gold. We'll be back next Wednesday with our Notre Dame recap, and with a bye week looming, a look ahead to the Big Ten season, which begins on October 4th with a trip to West Lafayette to take on Purdue. By this Saturday evening, we should have a better idea of what kind of team we are this year. Notre Dame appears to be trending up, while Michigan is still a great unknown. Something has to give on Saturday night in South Bend. This series has treated us to nail-biters, blowouts, and memories of breathtaking plays that play over and over in our mind each football season, especially on the eve of the Notre Dame game. Let's hope we're in for another classic this time around. Until next Wednesday, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Thanks for joining us, and until we meet again, think positive, beat ND, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.